Welcome into the PHNX Cardinals podcast, presented to you by the DraftKings Sportsbook app, America's top-rated sportsbook. Like and subscribe. Leave us a 5-star wherever you get your podcast. I'm Johnny Venerable. He is Bo Brock, live at the PHNX headquarters in downtown Phoenix. And, we did an audio-only pod yesterday. Hopefully you checked it out. We appreciate it if you did. But we weren't around when all the hoopla went down, Bo Brock. The Phoenix Suns have new ownership. The Arizona Cardinals do not.
No, the Arizona Cardinals do not. If you look at my Twitter timeline and the replies, pretty much any post I have just reporting on the team, there are people that jump in that ask for Michael Bidwill to sell the team. Now, we know that that's not going to happen, that this is a family that is entrenched as owners and don't want to relinquish ownership anytime soon. They want to continue on the tradition of owning this team. Now, what starts for this organization is the ability to not get lapped by Phoenix Suns ownership, right? To Mat Ishbia coming in for the Phoenix Suns to pretty much, for the first time in a long time, of the four major sports teams, show what true ownership looks like and leadership looks like. Michael Bidwill could probably get a little bit of a jump start here as far as trying to get his organization back to where it needs to be. And it's contending on and off the field, both of which they haven't done recently.
Robert Saleh, let's not confuse Robert Saleh with Michael Bidwill, outside of work. Robert Sarver, yeah. Allegations of racism, misogyny, right, in the workplace, outside of the workplace. Not a good guy by all accounts and purposes. Michael Bidwill, presumably good guy outside of the Cardinals. Inside of the Cardinals building, we haven't heard him being a combative personality. Just the team has the most losses in pro football history. They have the longest championship drought, I should say, in the history of professional football. So you take those kind of elements together and you say to yourself, okay, well, what can Michael Bidwill do differently? And I think my podcasting partner in crime here just outlined it well. I think it raises the stakes for Michael Bidwill.
Yeah.
To come out and have an offseason where we cannot collectively fall on our face. We have to be ready to go out and go big game hunting, so to speak. We got to look for a GM and or a head coach to come in and help us get this right. So we're not viewed as the, redheaded stepchild, for lack of a better term. We're an up and coming organization too. Right. A lot of people would argue this is a Suns town because it was the organic team that started here and has been here, right? Whereas the Cardinals, I know from my Midwestern roots, they were from Chicago and St. Louis, and now they're in Arizona, whatever. It is what it is. The Rams just won a Super Bowl in their fifth year in Los Angeles. Things can change. But I do believe Michael Bidwill now has legitimate competition from Mat Ishbia, if we're saying his last name correctly, who is a proven winner. People say that he is ultra competitive, will do everything and anything it takes to be able to succeed. And the Cardinals, their mindset has always just kind of been, yeah, we just want to be, competitive. Even though they've never said that, their aspirations year to year are not Super Bowl.
And I think that there's been a certain fall from grace for Bidwill because he wasn't his father. And for a long time, if you were power ranking the owners in the Valley, I mean, the worst was Sarver forever. I mean, it really felt like ever since he took over, people quickly realized that this guy was not Jerry Colangelo. He was far from it. The godfather of Phoenix sports. A guy who, with the Diamondbacks brought us our only really professional championship to the Valley. And then, you've got what's been going on post Colangelo with the Diamondbacks. Kendrick won't spend any money, won't invest in the product on the field, cries poor or whatever you want, says they're a mid-market team. And then you've got, what's the debacle that's gone on with the Arizona Coyotes. Yeah. And Bidwill is kind of just operated, and people kind of celebrated that he wasn't his father. He brings him to the Super Bowl. The offense leaves the field with the lead. Santonio Holmes allegedly toe taps in the end zone and lose to the Steelers there in the Super Bowl. And then this franchise, this place, Phoenix, the Valley, gets a taste of a successful football team, and it kind of began to crave more and more and more of it. And then we got a little bit of a taste of that under the BA era. And then, with Kliff and Kyler coming back a little bit after a brutal 2018, it's just like these ups and downs. And all the way along, I think that people have lost a little bit of faith in Michael Bidwill for him to be objective with this organization, to make the tough decisions, because he'll tell you in front of a camera, in front of a microphone, that he wants to do anything it takes to win, where we've seen recently that he's not necessarily willing to do everything. He's not willing to sever relationships with people that he's had for 2 decades plus in order to take the next step as a franchise. And I think with what this new ownership for the Suns does is puts the pressure on them that they can no longer just be like, hey, the NFL is king and we're just going to ride the coattails of the rest of the league. No, because they're going to play second fiddle to the Phoenix Suns every time.
Yeah, I want to get to Albert's comment here in the chat. Bo and Johnny, I think we might agree that this upcoming offseason is the most important one in Cardinals history. I would agree, especially recent Cardinal history, right? Michael Bidwill needs to change the perspective on the Cardinals. And absolutely he does, because the perception right now outside and inside the Valley is not buttoned up and not very good on the field, as we've seen with 4 wins this year. But off the field, coaches being fired, GM MIA, health concerns, which we still have an update on that. Maybe we get that later today on Hard Knocks. We'll get to that in a second. But you make a great point, Bo. It's like the NFL, if you guys don't know how the revenue is shared, that's exactly right. It's shared. Everybody gets the same piece of the pie, right? No matter if you're the Raiders and you're the poorest owner in Mark Davis, or you're Jerry Jones and you've got the biggest brand in the NFL, presumably in the Dallas Cowboys. So Michael Bidwill is going to get a check regardless. Plus, they're hosting the Super Bowl this year. And we've talked about it ad nauseum, that I think, and I know Michael Bidwill wants to win, but does he know how to win? And are there different levels to winning for Michael Bidwill? Like, I mean, I'll be frank, what we saw this year, the inactivity in free agency, the lack of sense of urgency to move on from Steve Keim in the past, a win this year might be, well, we're hosting the Super Bowl. That's a win for the Valley. And yeah, that's a win for State Farm Stadium. What about the brand of the Arizona Cardinals? That doesn't help anything. Whereas now the Suns have been buttoned up on the court with Devin Booker and company, great ambassador, owns the Valley, right? He's the face of Valley sports right now. Then you talk about the GM head coaching combination, which is chef's kiss, fantastic. What was missing? The ownership. And now they have that, right? And now they can be a beacon for Phoenix sports. We're proud of that. I know there are people in the chat probably who are hopefully fans of Cardinals around the world and the continental United States, and they're saying, well, I don't care about the Suns. Well, you should, in the context that it raises the stakes on Michael Bidwill to get it together. And I think that's the kind of the general consensus of our conversation is Michael Bidwill now does not have some bumbling owner that's, you know, a little bit shady, a lot of bit shady off the court with the Phoenix Suns to say, look, I'm better than him. Don't worry about my record. Don't worry about my GM. We're fine. I haven't done anything wrong. Well, okay, time to raise the stakes.
Yeah, and I think what this organization, this ownership is proven so far is the inability to identify red flags as far as maybe ceilings for people that you've put in key positions, whether it's the head coach or whether it's people in the front office, because I think this has lingered a little bit too long, and there's missed opportunities there. And, really taking advantage of a rookie quarterback contract. They hadn't done that. And the flags were there. And you had the opportunity last postseason to be an 11-win team that was floundering at the end of the season, to see it play out, still make the playoffs, have that, that little notch, right? But then also see the debacle that was the wild card round against the Rams, not being able to compete. And then you could, with having a successful season, still be able to kind of self-scout your team, your organization enough to where that offseason, it shouldn't have happened. And I don't think anybody's saying hindsight's 2020, because when we were in it, a lot of us were saying, what the fuck is going on? They're not doing anything. They re-signed James Conner. They re-signed Zach Ertz. They brought back Dennis Gardeck. That's pretty much it. They brought in Will Hernandez outside of Hollywood Brown, was probably the biggest addition to this roster this offseason. And when you watch the game happen in the playoffs, that wasn't enough. That wasn't going to narrow the margin between the Arizona Cardinals and the best team in the league in the previous season. And that's just that's not being active enough. And that falls on the shoulders of ownership for not, really holding these guys accountable and holding them to the flames. Like, hey, this is tough. It's being too content, right? It's looking at last season as progress, as little as it is. And in this league now, I mean, that's not accepted by fan bases, and it shouldn't be. That mediocrity shouldn't be accepted. And if this ownership for the Suns is anything what people are saying it is, I mean, that's going to be at a next level. I mean, this sounds like Mark Cuban 2.0, but actually played the game of hoops. And you got to, if you're a Suns fan, you have to be excited about that. And if you're a Cardinals fan, you have to hope that the Arizona Cardinals are paying attention, that they don't want to play a far second fiddle to the biggest name in town.
Yeah, especially when the Suns, they draft and develop well, right? They get free agents, and yeah, they're not maybe where they want to be in terms of like their championship bubble, but like they won how many regular season games last year? They were the number 1 seed in the West. They're going to be a top 3 seed barring injury this year in the Western Conference. Hell, they could win the Western Conference. You look at the Western Conference, it's awful. The Cardinals are going to be top 3, not in the conference, potentially picking the NFL draft for a team that was supposed to make the playoffs. They were predicted by our friends in Vegas. We love them. We love DraftKings to have a playoff spot, a playoff berth this year. It's not going to happen. If you've watched this team, injuries or not, and I know a lot of people want to harp on injury, but I want to get to some of these comments here, Bo. Abbott777 is Keim 100% gone. I would say there is a 1% chance he returns. Of course, barring until he's fired, he's not fired. But everything we've heard, we've seen, we've read, Bo Brock, is that Steve Keim will not be the general manager. Maybe not with the organization, but he will not be the GM when the offseason begins. I
mean, you can't say with 100% certainty, but it's like 99.9% that he's done as the general manager of this team. And we even saw, I saw Ron Wolfley even admitted that. What's concerning?
I didn't see that.
Yeah, Wolfie even said that, I think, to 92.3 KTR, that he thinks that it's done with Keim as the GM. But then he also said that he thinks that Kliff is coming back. He thinks Kliff is going to be the coach of this team, barring any like really true interest from Sean Payton. And we got into that, you and I, on our audio only last night, that you really have to check out. And like, we can't not do a show where Sean Payton doesn't come up in discussion.
It happens organically. We're not forcing it.
And I'm trying to do my best not to dive right into it. But no, it's I would say that he's definitely done as the general manager. So that's something to be celebrated, and to separate both of these. One, whatever, we still don't know what it is. It's still health related, and you wish the best for Steve Keim, the person, the family man, whatever, and all that. But as far as the general manager, you can celebrate that his days are done. As far as drafts that aren't going to impact the upcoming season, and lack of moves in free agency to help this roster out, help your franchise quarterback out.
Yeah, I love Ron Wolfley, but he's connected with the organization. He works for the Cardinals.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that can be a good and bad thing. I'm going to trust insiders within the know. Dan Graziano, a little piece today that I want to point out, I believe on ESPN.com, talking about potential firings and folks maybe that are exiting their positions as head coaches in the NFL. He said it, quote, outside, this is from ESPN.com, outside of the obvious, which, of course, the two teams that have moved on from their coaches, Indianapolis and the Carolina Panthers, I have my eye on Denver, Houston, and Arizona for head coaching changes. And then, of course, he mentions, let's see what happens with Brandon Staley, blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, like, you've got people like him and Benjamin Albright, people with inside information within the league, saying that Kliff Kingsbury's probably going to get fired. So we love Ron Wolfley, but I mean, they got to get through these next 3 weeks. If you're Ron Wolfley, you can't come out and say Kliff should be fired. I think he'll get fired. He should be fired. No, like he's got to interact with Kliff, and really, that's a difficult question for him to answer, and that's also a difficult question for him to like. Should he be the head coach is different than do you think he's going to be the head coach? I don't think any of us agree he should be the head coach, but I think there's probably 20-25% chance he does stay on, because they feel like they're trapped a little bit, which is a terrible mindset and a terrible place to be.
Yeah, I like what Nightingale Sunset says. If there is a future where Kliff Kingsbury retains his role as head coach, and I said this last offseason, you couple him with an offensive coordinator. You need to bring somebody in, game planning wise, schematic wise, to help him with the flow, to just take over and shoulder the play calling on game days, because we've seen it now, and we've seen a massive regression from 2021 to 2022. I think that if you're going to keep Kliff, you keep him because you feel like he can still be the guy, to call the shots for this team. But as far as being that and a play caller, I mean, we've seen a lot, more gifted play callers humble themselves and go out and get offensive coordinators, including a guy who won a Super Bowl ring last season in Sean McVay. I mean, that has to be, if Kliff isn't willing to do that. And he had some conversations earlier this season, didn't he, Johnny? I mean, where he said that he would do whatever it takes to win. He was doing whatever it would take to win a football game. He would relinquish play calling. So that's at least a change in that conversation, to where I think in previous years he was like, well, what am I doing here if I'm not calling plays?
That's Arizona Animals' point. It's always been my point. Kliff, listen, was brought here to elevate quarterback play and offensive play. And he got to a ceiling with that probably mid-year last year, and it's fallen through. The glass ceiling has fallen through, and now he's at a point where it's regression city. So Kliff is not this great leader of men, with all due respect. And we're going to see that on display in Hard Knocks tonight. He is not Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin, who does not specialize in either side of the football, but his players respond to him, and that's why he's had a lot of the success that he's had. I can't get on board with Kliff Kingsbury, the CEO of the Arizona Cardinals football team.
And that'd be a tough pill to swallow for the fan base. I don't disagree. But I'm also not completely sold on like Dan Campbell, leader of men. Like it's a lot of puffing his chest out and saying, just having quotable things that he says, to where, does that truly resonate with the team, to where like he's got just a dynamic play caller in Ben Johnson? Does he just make Dan Campbell look good? If you just couple Kliff Kingsbury, I think he can just be good enough that if he can just delegate, a good DC potentially. I mean, hopefully if you keep Kliff, you're not keeping Vance. You're just retooling this coaching staff. And
could you see a scenario though to fire Vance Joseph, fire Steve Keim, fire Sean Kugler, keep Kliff Kingsbury?
When you go 4-13, when you go 4-13, heads have to roll.
No, I agree with that, and they should fire everybody. But in a hierarchy of Sean Kugler before the season, Vance Joseph, who a lot of people think is the better head coach on this roster, Keim the GM, and Kliff Kingsbury. Kliff is safe and everybody else is fired. That's weird. Like I don't understand how you spin that if you're Michael Bidwill, because I agree Cardinals are going to finish almost last in total defense. I don't think there's any way Vance Joseph is coming back. Sean Kugler was their most respected position coach, and then he had an incident that they're still trying to figure out. Kliff can't stay if all those people go. That's why I think we're just kind of spinning wheels here. Like,
right. If the GM is an external candidate, if somebody comes in, new eyes come in, I just can't imagine that he's long for keeping his Cardinals job that much longer than beyond this upcoming season. So no, I mean that's just going off of base of what Wolf said, and look, he's not the only one that's speculating that. I think that people see ownership, right, and this is part of the entire conversation, bringing it back to the new Suns or ownership, to where you don't think that they're going to put up with this mediocrity, this not truly contending and putting the team in position to do what they want to do each and every year, and that's contend for championships. It's this organization has to kind of be more active, and I think people are skeptical, and rightfully so, that Bidwell possesses the ability to do that, to make these tough decisions and part ways and hit the full reset button. And I think you and I are both on record that with how things have played out, it's the perfect opportunity to do it this offseason.
Brandon, I disagree. I like the job. Is it like the gold standard in the NFL? No, it's the Cardinals. We know what the Cardinals are and what the Cardinals aren't. But again, look at some of these other jobs that are going to be available. The Broncos have a quarterback who is approaching mid-30s who looks shot. They don't have their top 3 pick in the draft, right? That's a worse job. You're in a division with Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, I get it. And we argue, ownership versus ownership, but there are worse jobs. Houston can't get it together. They had Jack Easterby or be associated with that franchise for a long time. I mean, the Cardinals aren't alone in their embarrassment on and off the field, but the Cardinals are going to have money to spend. They're going to have their top 5 draft pick. Kyler Murray will be back at some point. Now, some of you may push back and say that's the wrong move, but he's coming back. By hook or by crook, Kyler Murray will suit up for this team at some point next year. And again, we could fast forward right now to this point next year, and this team could be in contention for a playoff spot with Kyler Murray. And that's not out of the realm of possibility when Daniel Jones is about to make the playoffs with the Giants with a roster that's not 1/10 as talented as the Arizona Cardinals, but they got the right GM and head coach. So, and to Mike's point, there's only 32 of these jobs. You pay somebody enough money to take this job, they will take it, assuming that they get what they want: power, infrastructure, whatever.
Power is the key.
Right.
Power is the key. I mean, when you give a guy like Sean Payton the keys to the organization, something that is unprecedented as far as this organization goes, maybe back to the Denny Green days, maybe he had that much power. But outside of that, there hasn't been that. And you wine and dine them and you give them a blank check. I mean, anything's possible, but people are skeptical whether or not, Michael Bidwill is willing to do all that. And is he willing?
Apathy is a real thing. Fan apathy is a real thing, us included. Yeah, it's going to be a really hard sell in 3 weeks for the fans of this team if Kliff Kingsbury's back. And I say that as somebody who likes Kliff Kingsbury, the person, but we've seen what Kliff Kingsbury is and isn't. And right now, this team needs the complete opposite of whatever he's selling, Bo.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that, but knowing who the owner is and kind of seeing how he's operated, like 2018 was the perfect time to do this full reset. He didn't do it. And from 2018 to 2019, and he decided to keep Keim after the horrible roster that was built, after dropping the ball twice at the quarterback position, signing Sam Bradford to an atrocious contract, probably the worst contract in franchise history, and then trading up and drafting Josh Rosen, the biggest bust of a pretty bustable draft class, outside of Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. And then, the performance on the field, 3-13, having the top pick, being one undone as far as kind of missing and identifying the next head coach of this franchise. It would have been a perfect reset, and they didn't do it. And now you're getting the same sense now, and we're reluctant to think that, Bidwill is willing to do it because we've seen how it's played out before. And unfortunately, he didn't pull the trigger, and hopefully he does this offseason.
I don't think there's a scenario in which they go through the hiring process for a GM and Kliff Kingsbury keeps his job. I do think if you're assuming Kliff stays, that Michael Bidwill just names Adrian Wilson or Quentin Harris the new GM of the team, right? That Black Monday that says this person will appoint Steve Keim's duties. He is our new general manager. He will partner with Kliff Kingsbury this offseason. If you open it up to an external or just the interview process, you're going to force Kliff on somebody that you haven't even interviewed yet. That's a disaster. It's a disastrous proposition.
You would have you'd be overrun with phone calls of people canceling their season tickets, right?
Right.
I mean, that's just not what people want to hear. They want real change. They want real change. They want to have hope, because what we see across this league, and you just look at the playoff standings now, and you see teams that people did not anticipate contending for playoff spots that were out of the picture at this time last year. And what's great about the NFL, it happens each and every year, is teams can go from the bottom of these standings and work their way up in only an off-season's time. And the Arizona Cardinals, as I've seen several times in this chat, they've got more than enough talent, whether to create assets, to acquire, younger, more controllable talent, or to just put in better positions, schematically through defensive scheme or offensive scheme, to be more successful than they were in 2022.
You want to bet on the Cardinals moving off of Kliff Kingsbury?
No.
That's your perspective. That's your perspective. You can also bet with your friends, Underdog Fantasy. I'm into daily fantasy, as is Bo Brock. We are off year-long fantasy. And listen, if you dabble on Underdog and you have a rough night, listen, you can pivot and bet the following day. This is perfect. All you got to do, draft your team against up to 5 of your buddies. The highest scoring squad for the night wins that cold, hard cash. You can dabble in NFL and the NBA. NBA players, no positional limits. Draft up to 6 shooting guards if you'll have it. Whatever you like, whatever you're into, Underdog Fantasy has you covered. All you got to do, friends, is go to underdogfantasy.com, download the app, sign up with promo code, you guessed it, PHNX, and Underdog will match your first deposit up to $100. You put in $100, bam, you get $100 right back in your Underdog account, ready to dabble, let's say, on Devin Booker's higher, lower. We'll see what's happening with DeAndre Ayton. Maybe take some lowers on Trace McSorley. I'm not saying, I'm just saying Underdog Fantasy, though, is where you got to be. And the best part about it is use that promo code PHNX. Get in on the action today.
I'm a dog. You're a dog. We're all underdogs here.
Dirty dog.
PHNX. And we also want you to, we've been talking about the Suns in a weird way all show long. And I want to invite you to the inaugural PHNX Tea Party. It's at it's brought to you by Four Peaks at Dobson Ranch Golf Course, the entire driving range. We've got it. We've rented it out. We're going to have a blast. It's going to feature the PHNX Suns Watch Party. Our hosts from the PHNX Suns podcast are going to be hanging out. There's going to be great food, good drinks, great merch, contests, prizes, $45 per person. But also you can save some money if you're a diehard. You can sign up to be a diehard today at gophnx.com. It's $36 for you, $160 per foursome, $120 for diehards. Kids under 10, kids 10 and under play for free. They get the free youth clinic going on as well at Dobson Ranch Golf Course. For more info, of course, you can check us out on all our social channels. Of course, we got a link in the description. Check us out as well. If you already are a diehard, you can find your link for cheaper tickets in the Discord. Don't miss it. January 13th, the Suns are taking on the T-Wolves. We're going to watch that game. They're going to broadcast pre and post with the PHNX Suns podcast. Join us then. You don't want to miss it.
For those of you who don't know, the Arizona Cardinals are still playing games this year. Meaningful. That's up for debate. But they did practice today. My guy Bo Brock was at the Tempe facility talking to the new quarterback of this franchise, at least temporarily, Trace McSorley. How'd old Trace look today?
Man. Well, we actually talked to Kliff first, and like normally, Kyler Murray every Wednesday would talk to the media, and then for one short week it was Colt McCoy, and Colt McCoy, like we kind of felt like there's no way he's going Christmas. Kliff Kingsbury gave us this update on McCoy.
Still in the protocol, but feeling a lot better. He'll be out this week, but he definitely felt a lot better today, which was encouraging.
So McCoy's feeling better, but there's just no chance. And Kliff even said earlier this week, like if he was cleared through protocol, he probably wasn't going to play. So that means Trace McSorley is up. And if you thought maybe like he had a start for the Ravens, that was all in preseason. It was all in preseason with the Arizona Cardinals. This will be Trace McSorley's first career NFL start on Sunday against 7-time Super Bowl champion Tom Brady. Now, I asked Trace McSorley, how does he feel that he's making his first start against the GOAT?
Yeah, definitely excited about that. He's the GOAT, and there's no two ways to put that. But, I just got to focus on what I can control. I'm going against their defense, not against him. So that's kind of the way I try and look at it. But, it is cool to kind of look back and realize that, starting against him the first time.
It's cool, Johnny.
It is cool. You know what else is cool? If you're pissed off about the Cardinals playing on Christmas Day, super cool. I guarantee you, after whatever they're about to trot out on Christmas Day, this is going to be the last time, at least in the short term, they get picked on Christmas Day. We've had back-to-back Christmas Day games. Last year, they took a big L. They wet the bed against Carson Wentz at home, a Carson Wentz-led Colts team that was terrible at the end of the year. And now they're going to have Trace McSorley on prime time against Tom Brady. God love the Arizona Cardinals, man. But, for those of you who are like, I just would like my evening freed up, not the Cardinals playing on Christmas, because when they're on prime time, it doesn't go well. Buckle up, friends. Buckle up for Trace McSorley. And listen, I love Todd Bowles. I think he's probably in a little bit over his head this year. He's got the combative personality that is Tom Brady. Will he or won't he retire? The Tampa dynamic is interesting. There's so much of the Cardinals, like prior Keim, Wilkes era blueprint on that team with, of course, Jason Light. They've dabbled on a lot of the ex-Cardinals on their Super Bowl team. Daniel Buchanan was on that team. Kevin Minter, a bunch of the offensive linemen. And now it just feels like that run is over. And they could presumably win the NFC South, but they've tapped out. They sold their soul. They got their Super Bowl. Then they kind of drove Bruce Arians out. And so Todd, unfortunately, has to fall on the sword. I would love to see Todd Bowles back in Arizona next year, not as the head coach, but if they could somehow corral him if he does lose his job as the defensive coordinator. I think that's something that, again, if Kliff Kingsbury were to keep his job and you want to sell the fan base on some change, Todd Bowles is beloved here. They had the best defense in the NFL in 2014. They had a defense that grossly overachieved with him as the defensive coordinator in 2013. So I think it would be a great homecoming for Bowles to come back next year. I just feels like ownership's going to go in a different direction next year.
Yeah, I love what Blake says. Send some OGs to make it through this contest. Yeah, some OGs would absolutely help with that. Just pop it with the Yuletide cheer and then turn on the game at 6:15 on Christmas night to watch Trace McSorley take on Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And this is a Cardinals team, even against a Russell Wilson-less Broncos team, was a get-right game. Even against that putrid offense, they were a get-right game, and they continue to be. I don't have any doubts that this is going to be a get-right game for Tom Brady and this Tampa Bay offense. And poor Trace McSorley has now taken away from Colt McCoy, having to fall on the sword for the final couple games here for the Arizona Cardinals. I mean, Tom Brady's 6-1 against guys making their first NFL start. Now, he's 6-0 going into this season, and then Brock Purdy and the San Francisco 49ers obliterated them and blew their doors off. So now he's 6-1. He's looking for a little revenge there. Tom is probably not going to be hanging with the fam all day on Christmas. He's going to be dialed in, and he's going to be ready to kind of put up some points and have a season's worth of frustration to take out on Vance Joseph's defense.
Are the Cardinals going to be able to field a competent team? We saw last week, no Byron Murphy, no Antonio Hamilton. Are those guys any closer? And what about on the offensive side? Any chance Rodney Hudson plays again this year?
No, I mean, Rodney Hudson was a guy that Kliff said a couple weeks ago there was a chance that he could come off the IR. There hasn't been any rumblings of that. Will Hernandez came back last week. Kelvin Beacham's dealing with kind of a knee and an ankle that he suffered on the Colt McCoy play. He's kind of day to day. We'll see what happens with him in the right tackle spot. And then you've got, as you mentioned, Hamilton and Murphy and Wilson, a trio of cornerbacks are all pretty much day to day. I would say, according to Kliff earlier this week, there's really no chance he's going to play this week. I see people ask me all the time on Twitter, why haven't they IR'd him? I think they're trying to leave the door open. At this point, what's the point? If he can get out there in a contract year and perform and continue to put stuff on tape, I think they want to give him that opportunity. I mean, he's not really taking up a roster spot. They can elevate guys from the practice squad like Hairston and Whitaker.
It feels like Byron Murphy's headed to a one-year contract with whoever signs him, doesn't it? It feels like he was trending toward the first quarter, not 3/4, but I mean, he's been gone for 6 weeks. Feels like he was trending toward, hey, you're going to get a nice contract, whether it be from Cardinals or somebody else. Cardinal fans, myself included, we can't let Byron Murphy go. He's playing good football. To now, will he come back? I think he will. I feel like, whomever's coordinating this defense, local product, like trying to get him healthy. But, man, this has just been brutal. Plus, the end of last year, he played, but he was really bad, especially in the red zone. He gave up a ton of touchdowns. I don't know. That's one of the more demoralizing kind of sub-stories. You think about the first 3 picks of the 2019 draft for the Cardinals all out right now. Kyler Torrey's ACL. Byron's got an issue with his back. And then Zach Allen, who they said could play next week against Atlanta. He's got his hand in his cast. Like, man, that draft class right now is not doing you any favors.
Yeah, and one of those guys is the only one of those guys has an extension. And it's Kyler Murray. And, Allen, is it the same thing? I don't think Allen has to do anything else this year to really prove that he deserves to get a decent payday this offseason. And you hope that it's from the Arizona Cardinals. What's that?
How much are you going to pay him, though?
I think he can get it's probably gone down since he suffered another injury. And that's kind of, he's been oft injured his entire 4-year career. But, he showed when healthy, he can be a guy that can be disruptive. He looks a little bit like Watt as far as knocking passes down and notching sacks at a career best rate this season. So, it might have played into the favor of the Arizona Cardinals. You know, there's always the chance that like teams like Jacksonville last offseason is going to be maybe the Bears this offseason, where they just have too much money to spend and they can overpay a player like they did Christian Kirk. Or could the Bears go out and get a guy like Murphy and add him to that defense as part of their rebuild? But, you know, hopefully he feels like he wants to stay here in the desert. We talked to Byron Murphy on draft night. He joined us on our show and said he wants to be here. So we hope that he continues to stay in that mindset, but you never know. I mean, with how things have gone down, I know that he's tried to come back. I mean, he trotted out onto the practice field a couple times, and then the very next day he was out again. And in backs, we all know if you ever had a back issue, it's not something that you just, hey, I'm feeling good today. That means it's going to be, I'm good going forward. They're so tricky.
What's not tricky is using the Game Time app right now. Okay, so hear me out, everybody. If you're trying to escape family, and a lot of us, you know, holidays, we like to get away from families, give them the old stiff arm, the old Chandler Jones stiff arm, and you're thinking to yourself, what can I do on the cheap if I'm in the Valley? Game Time app, Cardinals hosting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 60%, up to 60% on tickets when you buy them last minute. Hell, it might even be more than that. I have checked over the course of the last couple of days. I haven't checked today on the old Game Time app. Tickets are sub 60 for a primetime game on Christmas Day, and I guarantee you wait to the last minute. I'm talking Friday, Saturday. I would venture they could go little as $30-$40, maybe some standing room only action, just having a good time. State Farm Stadium. Shield your eyes when they're on offense with Trace McSorley, but chance to see the GOAT in person, Tom Brady, absolutely. All you got to do, click on the link in the show notes. We've had a ton of people reach out to us, say, hey, Johnny, I want to just give you a heads up. I purchased from Game Time. Not only did I have a great experience, it's super easy to use. They don't charge all that garbage, service fees, third-party fees, hidden fees. They're upfront. They're straight with you. And the best part is you can download the app and dabble whenever you want, not only for the NFL, but NBA concerts, right? I've got my eye on some Lizzo tickets with my wife come May. But I told her, I said, I'm waiting to the last minute because that's how the beauty of Game Time works. Hammer that link in the description below. You're not going to be sorry that you did, friends.
Yeah, I'm looking right now at some of the tickets. You can get them as low as $54. $54.
Oh, so it's going down
right now.
Down.
I think they said they were down 20% from week to week. Continue to kind of just ride that out. Be confident that the Game Time app can save you up to 60% on game day. Also be confident that perfect stocking stuffer this year for your friends 21, family members 21 and over, is OG's, ogsbrands.com. Check out their full range of fantastic products. You got the creams, you got the fruits, you got the ratio, the minis, and then you got the sleep edition that's going to help you as you worry about whether or not Michael Bidwill is going to make the right decisions with this team. Is Trace McSorley going to be, is he going to be okay playing behind this offensive line? The things that are keeping you up at night. Sleep Edition gummy can put you fast asleep and keep you asleep, and it's delicious as well. It's got the aquaberry flavor. But if you're looking for a different experience, if you're looking to maybe get a little bit of energy, if you're looking to maybe chill out, OG's has something for everyone. Check out all their incredible products. As I said, ogsbrands.com, and follow them on Instagram at ogsbrands. Got to be 21 years or older. You can find them at your local dispensary.
3 weeks away from Black Monday, January 9th. Listen, season finale in San Francisco, we're going to turn right around. And who knows what's going to happen with this team. We're on Sean Payton watch here with the Arizona Cardinals until we're not. That's a rule of this show. If you're new to the programming, first of all, welcome, like, and subscribe. We're on Sean Payton watch with the Arizona Cardinals here on PHNX Cardinals. We're driving this narrative until we cannot anymore, until we get word that the Cardinals are either keeping Kliff, going somewhere else, or Sean Payton's taking another job. And then, Bo, I got a request today from a couple people asking what's going to go down with these coaching changes. So I thought it'd be a good time. Let's double down with our projections for vacancies this offseason.
Can we see that Payton graphic again? Look at this. As we sit a couple days away from Christmas, doesn't Sean Payton look like a proud parent that got what the kid was asking for Christmas? Doesn't he have that kind of like smirk on his face? Like, yeah, I'm a great dad. Look at what I did. I just got him the newest hoverboard or whatever the kids are in on these days.
I like it. I was trying to impersonate him right now.
You're behind the graphics, so nobody saw that. But there he is.
I got him one of those. My son likes to play Fall Guy. One of those Roblox toys.
There you
kids
go.
in the chat. You don't even know what I'm talking about. I'm with it. I'm hip with it. Paw Patrol. Hell yes. Bubble Guppies. Let's go. Let's get to some coaching vacancies. Tiers 2.0. Let's talk about it. Matter of time. Again, we're going to update this week to week. If you missed it, check this out. Carolina, Indianapolis, gone. They've already gotten vacancies, and we do not think, pending something unforeseen, Wilkes and Jeff Saturday will be back. Cardinals are going to have to compete with them potentially. How about the Denver Broncos that just lead an ass kicking on the Arizona Cardinals? I mean, listen, they could keep Hackett if they went out down the stretch, but, who really knows? It feels like Hackett's going to be one and done. I've got our Redbirds in there. We've talked about them trending this way, and I think we're another loss away, Bo, from Lovie Smith being bumped up to matter of time. Don't you feel like that?
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, one win this season, right? A win and a tie.
Not great.
No, it's not great. Yeah, 112-1, winning just over 10% of his games. That's just you can make the case to send him out of town. You're rooting, right, for the Rams to beat Denver this week.
Well,
who
Bo,
for in that
Bo
game?
And I have some disagreements here. Like, I want the Cardinals, of course, to pick as high as they can. But I also want the Cardinals deserve a fourth place schedule. I'm sorry. We cannot allow Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford, which it sounds like Stafford's going to return, to have a fourth place schedule next year. And if the Cardinals were to lose out, we're not rooting for that, but if it were to happen and the Rams were to win one more game, then the Cardinals would get a fourth place schedule. But if both teams lose out, I don't think between the Rams and the Cardinals, they're going to go 0-6 in these next three games. I think somebody's going to win a game.
And that would be helpful. I mean, right now, when you look at, because they would play a team from the AFC South, depending on where they fall in the standings. And if you can put the Houston Texans on your schedule for next season, you'll take that, right? And then you would take on maybe a Falcons team. Falcons or Saints, I don't think it matters. Those are two interchangeable teams. But as it stands right now, the Cardinals would take on the Saints, and the Cardinals would take on the Packers, and they would take on, from the AFC South, they would take on the Indianapolis Colts as of right now. So you're going to have a pretty decent schedule that's going to play in your favor, just depending on what you do roster-wise next season. But as far as the opponents, there's nobody that's like, oh, we don't want to face them. But look, I completely agree with this. When we look at the vacancies, like Sean Payton, the criteria that's being reported is he wants to be by Los Angeles, right? And he wants an established quarterback. Charlotte doesn't have either one of those. They would probably be on a rookie unless they pull off a trade for a guy. And Charlotte is about as far in the NFL as any possible team could be from Los Angeles. The Colts, he doesn't want to go to Indianapolis and probably work for Irsay. And then, Denver is, I agree with what you're saying against Russell Wilson. I don't think he wants to take on a guy who's going to be approaching, the wrong side of 30 under that deal. And then you look at the teams underneath that. I think he left New Orleans because I think that his tenure there had run its course, and I don't think he'd want to return. And then Tampa, it would take them probably finding the successor to Tom Brady to really speak to Sean Payton that he want to go live on the other side of the United States from California.
Let's talk about those sleeper teams if we could. Let's leave this graphic up here. So it feels like the Rams are going to run it back at least one more year with McVay and Stafford. We don't have clarification on that from McVay's standpoint, but we would assume Stafford's coming back to play for McVay. So let's cross off the Rams, which is huge, right? Then you look at Atlanta. Does he want to go back in the NFC South? He doesn't have a quarterback. That team, I don't think, is ready to fire Arthur Smith just yet. I think they're going to give him one more year. He's not going to go to Cleveland.
You think Arthur Smith is a good coach, given what his rosters have looked like?
I think he's fine. That's why I put him under sleeper. Let's see what he does to the Cardinals in 2 weeks and can do us maybe some favors. Deshaun Watson, Cleveland Browns. You think he wants to inherit that mess? I think Stefanski's a good coach. I'd be interested in Stefanski should the Browns fire him. Then you look at he's not going to want to fire or follow Belichick if Belichick steps down. These are the two big ones, the big boys, the Cowboys and the Chargers. We're all Brandon Staley fans here. We should all root for Brandon Staley. We should all try to do what we can to celebrate Brandon Staley and his success this year. Because if the Chargers succeed, then that job's not opening up. If the Dallas Cowboys succeed in a brutally embarrassing playoff scene that's got Brock Purdy and Kirk Cousins and maybe Gardner Minshew. Like, Cowboys are going to be fine. It's lining up. I think we're trending toward, we take the graphic off, we're trending toward, I believe, Bo, either the Cardinals or he stays in broadcasting. I'm almost ready to say that. And that almost could be worse for Michael Bidwill, because then Sean Payton really did say, I am not interested in what you have, to Michael Bidwill. I would rather stay in broadcasting, because in de facto, I'm waiting for the right scenario. This isn't it. That's a really bad place to be. If you're Michael Bidwill, you would almost rather him get it hired by somebody else in this coaching cycle, lose out to him, say, oh man, we were right there, we got second place. But if he picks going back to the broadcast booth with Fox Sports and company, instead of taking on your franchise and your money, that's a horrible look that I'm sure they want to try to avoid. And here's a great way to avoid it, Michael. Pay him more money than you've ever paid a head coach, and make him say yes.
Well, let me ask you this. Who's in a bigger indictment on? Is it a bigger indictment on the organization as a whole, or who's under contract as their quarterback for the foreseeable future?
Organization as a whole. Organization, because Kyler Murray is, when he's healthy and playing, is very capable. And I mean, like, Sean Payton talked himself into Jameis. Sean Payton wanted Jameis. And Kyler Murray is exponentially more talented, and I think has proven a hell of a lot more than Jameis Winston has. Yeah, to me, it's organizational control. It's how much money he makes. I think it's staying on the West Coast. It's staying in the NFC in a diminishing division. Cardinals, again, no one wants to admit this, national media on the old Twitter streets, they should check all the boxes. And I don't give two fucks about people who say he's not complimentary of them, he's wishy-washy on Colin Cowherd's show. If I'm Sean Payton, I don't have to campaign to anybody. And if anything, I use that as a negotiation ploy to say, yeah, I'm not in love with your team. Make me fall in love. Give me more money. Give me more power. Then I'll take your job. But if he's gushing about the Cardinals, Michael Bidwill is going to have a false sense of security. Like, okay, I paid Kliff Kingsbury $5 million. Here's $8 million, Sean. No. That's not how we do business here. I'm a big boy Super Bowl winning head coach.
Well, and also nobody should be complimentary of this franchise right now, right? Especially when you want to angle for change in this organization. Like, you shouldn't say, oh, I mean, even if he wanted his job, to sit there and just kind of spit shine this turd, that would be the wrong move, completely wrong move, because then Michael Bidwell's sitting there like, yeah, we're not that bad. See, like, we were able to get Sean Payton. But I mean, if he were to say, if Michael Bidwill picks up the phone and calls Sean Payton, and Sean Payton says, man, no, that's not necessary. Don't fire up the PJ. You don't need to fly out to LA. I like my job at Fox, being as kind as possible, because of when he was a ball boy back for the Cardinals back in the 80s. Like, I that would be, you would hope that Michael Bidwill would realize that is the biggest shot across the bow as far as where this organization truly stands in the landscape of the NFL, and that they got massive problems. If a coach looks at it and sees the roster, the top players, including Kyler Murray, and just smells the dysfunction, is just like, thanks, but no thanks. That is horrible for this organization.
Didn't Dan Quinn just do that last offseason? He passed on either the Jaguars job, the Broncos job. I think it was the Jags job, where Dan Quinn saw Trent Baalke as the GM, even with Trevor Lawrence, and you could say even with Kyler Murray, and said, I don't want the stank of your franchise on me. I'm going to wait out McCarthy. I'm going to wait out this hiring cycle. Because remember, he was a hot prospect. Everybody just assumed Dan Quinn's going to take a head coaching job in the next, offseason, and he didn't. He said, no thanks. He pulled his name out. And that was an indictment that made ownership in Jacksonville say, we got to get Doug Peterson. We got to pay Doug Peterson a bunch of money to come here. Yeah. And he's got the resume. Like, if you're Michael Bidwill, because it'll get out. Like, there's too many people covering this league now, national perspective. And shit, if we hear anything, we'll let you know. But if something were to happen and Sean Payton says no to this franchise, everybody's going to know. Right. So they can't spin it any other way. They just say, hey, Sean Payton Michael Bidwill reached out to see if he'd be interested, and he said no. And then you're going to have to be ready for that.
if January 9th comes and they fire Kliff, and then it's your boy saying that he's got a big date with the prettiest girl in school, and you say what happened, and you guys never went out, like that's what it's gonna be. I mean, something happened. Like it either A, was never gonna happen to start with, or B, he was never interested. Don't you think? And that's just as big of any. I mean, of course you better have your plan B already. Like right now, he better be working on, hey, here's my plan A. It's Sean Payton, and then plan B, it's D'Amico Ryan, it's Ben Johnson, the OC with the Lions, or whoever it may be. But you better have a pretty short list that you're ready to move on. If Sean Payton's just like, look, there's just too much going on here. This is not what I want to bite off right now for my career after retiring from the Saints and then having a pretty nice year as a broadcaster and everybody coveting me as their next head coach.
There's just so many parallels to the Saints job that he took over in the Cardinals job outside of the Katrina aspect. But the Saints were the Aints. They had a quarterback that they signed with Sean Payton in the fold that a lot of people thought was damaged goods. But the difference is Sean Payton wasn't who Sean Payton has become, and he's got options, and he can afford to be particular. And so we're just going to have to see what Michael Bidwill opts to do, what he opts to gamble with his money. You can gamble with your funds right now in the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Use that promo code, you guessed it, PHNX. Place a $5 bet on any NFL team to win their game. Guess what, friends? $150 in free bets if they do. We got a couple stankers this weekend. Go check out who the Bills and the Chiefs play this weekend. Tell me that you wouldn't lay $5, not on the spread, but the money line for a chance. I think almost a surefire lock chance to get $150 in free bets. Again, friends, that's only at DraftKings. That's only with promo code PHNX with PHNX here. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See those show notes for it. Details, Bo.
Yeah, I want to answer Arizona Animals, GM hiring will tell us all question or statement in the chat here in a bit. But also I got to tell you about Octane Raceway in Mavericks. We had an awesome time. The PHNX crew over at Octane Raceway in Mavericks. We were getting ourselves around the track. Some of us quicker than others. Johnny and Frank Sanders was actually the top racer out there on the go-kart track, but full service food and drink menu. I heard that their menu has been retooled. It's in an unbelievable spot right now, and they have the best food and drink out there. Full-time indoor-outdoor track in the U.S., 22 bowling lanes, 85 arcade games, the state-of-the-art laser tag arena, billiard tables, dozens of 4K TVs. So if you want to go watch the game there while your kids race around the track or play games, definitely get in on it. In those daily specials are going on. It's a Wednesday. Right now they got Winning Wednesday, half-price arcade games all day. Go check it out. Our friends over at Octane Raceway and Mavericks. To the PHNX family, tell them that we sent you there. You've seen the fun our crew has had. Go have some fun of your own. Octane Raceway and Mavericks. Great time to get a gift card there as well. Send your family and friends there. Have a blast.
Just feels like we had a blast, by the way, Octane Raceway. It feels like we're on the precipice of a monumental shift in power here in the Valley with Valley Sports, specifically with the Phoenix Suns and now the Arizona Cardinals. Steve Keim supposedly leaving the franchise if he hasn't already. It's a done deal, especially if you've got Ron Wolfley out there telling people he's gone. Oh, we love Wolfley. We've tried to get him on the show. Hopefully down the line we can get Wolf on the show. But Adrian Wilson, Quentin Harris, external. There's going to be somebody new picking the players come next March and April.
With Arizona Animals saying in the chat, GM hiring will tell all. Do you think that this, especially with a guy like Sean Payton out there as maybe the top target, do you wait? Do you wait till you have the conversation with Payton? If he is interested, you let him tab a guy, or is it more important to have a GM in place before you talk to Payton?
What is preventing me, if I'm Michael Bidwill, from talking to Sean Payton right now? Is there
I don't think there's any tampering. I don't think there's any tampering.
Presumably, we should have our answer on Sean Payton now or in the next couple of weeks.
That violates probably a bunch of the rules as far as the NFL goes.
You think so?
The Rooney rule, obviously, you can't have a guy and then interviewed anybody. But I get what you're saying. Let's not be.
If he has interest to the fact that we're going to interview him after the season, I would say if you're rooting for Kliff Kingsbury to no longer be with this franchise as its head coach, you should be rooting for them to look and hire an external candidate general manager. I think the best course of action for Kliff Kingsbury to return, if you're a supporter of Kliff, is for one of these two internals to be hired and promoted right after the end of the season. That Monday, we're going to get a notice from somebody on Twitter Monday, January 9th, or hell, maybe Sunday night he gets fired. But that's not, Bidwell usually waits till the last minute to do anything. I would say we're going to get up, we're going to have a discussion Monday, January 9th about either Kliff Kingsbury being retained in combination with Quentin or Adrian being promoted, or that Kliff Kingsbury has been fired and the GM search and the head coaching search is ongoing, and Bidwell will have a individual singular press conference, something he hasn't done since January of 2013. I don't think there's a scenario in which Kingsbury is retained. I'm going to go start my GM search right now. Tell me if you could see that happening, Bo. I can't.
No, I don't either. I mean, you're kind of letting Adrian Wilson and Quentin Harris have these next couple of weeks, and I'm sure you're kind of interviewing them for the most part on a daily basis, which is there's advantage there, obviously, if you're Bidwell and seeking, what the future of front office leadership looks like. Can they fill that? And I know it's just like minor moves. Obviously, you're seeking out a backup quarterback at this point, and they pivoted from Carson Strong to James Morgan, and these aren't like going to bolster the Cardinals roster to whether you win a couple of these games down the stretch. But you just kind of see how they talk to players, they work in concert with the coaching staff, and then what their vision is beyond this season, and then truly have that interview after this is all said and done, once they get out of this just awful season and kind of put to bed 2022 and move on to 2023. But yeah, I think that it's not completely. I agree with what you're saying. I don't see any issue with that.
Jalen in the chat, how could the GM search and then let the GM decide whether or not the new GM wants to keep Kliff? I would assume that there's a provision with Michael Bidwill that, hey, Quentin, hey, Adrian, I'm going to promote you, but you have to keep Kliff Kingsbury. And that's the end of the conversation.
No, I don't know. I think that he probably wants their honest opinion. You would hope, right? And I think that getting back to our very first topic of this show, with the new ownership with the Suns, right? And you hope that this guy sounds like he's obviously ultra competitive, ultra successful, and that he's going to bring the same type of leadership that he has with his mortgage lending company that he's going to bring to the NBA and how the Suns run their franchise. That Michael Bidwill sees that, and what the Suns ownership can do is empower their employees, empower the people that they've delegated to be leading their front offices, leading their coaching staffs, and leading the player group. That Bidwell seeks out the right people for these positions, GM, head coach, empowers them and delegates them to do their job and doesn't meddle. Right? We've heard he watches tape with Kliff and Vance. You hope that, like, as far as decisions on this roster and stuff, whoever is the GM gets to make those decisions. The GM gets to make the decision as far as the head coach. That has to be. He has to separate himself from it. Like, being the owner, he's not the GM, because that it's disastrous if it's. And there have been rumors that that's the case, and you just hope those aren't true, because that it becomes a much larger problem for this organization.
Jalen, it'll be interesting because in one of the flight plan episodes, it was revealed that A-Dub had a big hand in hiring Kliff. I hadn't heard that. I think the Cardinals, when they initially hired Kliff Kingsbury, they were talking to Adam Gase too. They were just trying to go so far the opposite end of the spectrum from Steve Wilks, and they wanted their own Sean McVay. I mean, that's what it came down to either elevate Josh Rosen or to take Kyler Murray. But AZ Cards, I'm with you. They need to hire a hard ass, not somebody soft like Kliff. This team, this franchise is soft. You can't expect things to change if you keep doing the same thing. How much, Bo? This is something we haven't gotten into. I know we're over an hour. I think everybody, 153 people hanging out on a Wednesday. Hey, good news for you. This is one of two shows we're going to do today. Smash that like button. Get us to 100 likes. We're going to party post Hard Knocks tonight. But Bo, let me ask you this. How much do you think these last 3 games affect Kliff Kingsbury's job security, if at all?
I don't think they impact whether or not he's
that's
staying
really
or going.
That's really unfortunate, because if I'm Michael Bidwill and I watch this team be embarrassed on Christmas Day, am I just going to blame it on injuries? Should I just is that a cop-out answer?
No, I think there's enough on tape right now, on the field, in Hard Knocks, and what's shown and isn't shown, as far as how this team operated in the offseason and training camp and preseason, and struggled, from start to finish on and off the field. I think that there's enough there to where you either buy into, the belief that he didn't have a shot from the very beginning, or that, he's big part of the blame for why things didn't go right.
They would be, if they lose out, which all of us feel like that's a possibility.
Yeah.
They'll have lost 7 straight games. They'll have 1 home win in almost 2. It'll be 18, 19 months by the time next season kicks off. They'll have a point differential, you would assume, approaching minus 100. And again, I know who they're starting at quarterback, but
what happens if they compete and contend with Tampa on Christmas? I mean, Tampa struggled in their own right. They play Atlanta. It's a winnable game. Like, what I'm saying is they could go 3-0 down the stretch. If I'm Michael Bidwell, that doesn't
they go 3-0. He's keeping his job. I believe that 100%.
They go 7-10.
Yeah. They somehow win these next 3 games, because for Michael, you can say, well, my messaging, meaning Kliff's messaging, is superseding or overcoming the injuries we're having. Guys are responding to me still. What does that say about Kliff Kingsbury, the leader? We're overcoming adversity. I don't have my quarterback and a bunch of my star players. We're still winning games.
They've been eliminated. Like, I think the line starts like pre-elimination and post-elimination. Like, at this point.
But see, that's the line of competition and what we value as success and what the Cardinals value as success. And that's where we started this show off, was the Suns have a level where they're changing ownership. Their bar is a championship. The Cardinals bar, is it a championship, or is it just we're trying to be competitive? We're going to make excuses and we're going to be status quo. Because I think if they're competitive and they win a couple of these games, it increases the chances of Kliff Kingsbury coming back. Where I disagree with you, Bo, is if this gets even more, because last night, that's embarrassing last Sunday, what happened in Denver. And I know they were winning with Colt McCoy, but they were winning 6-3. They got run on by Latavius Murray, and they lost to Brett Ripken and Mac Jones back-to-back weeks. If they lose out and they have just a horrendous point differential and they lose 7 straight games, I don't think we'll have any issue with Kliff Kingsbury being let go on Monday, January 9th. I don't see any scenario in which he would be able to be brought back. How could you face your fan base, have that conversation with them, and expect them to take you seriously? You asked me the other day, Bo asked me off air, have we thought of a situation in which a head coach was basically fired in early October? He was the favorite to be fired next in early October by a bunch of the sports books, and then somehow kept his job without winning. Somehow got to January and he was just still magically employed. Have we ever found that outlier?
I can't think of any. I really can't. Like, where there was just such an overwhelming outpouring from the fan base that did not want to see somebody return. Actually, I'm not going anywhere. Like, that hasn't happened. Like, when was I can't think of when that's happened. Like, like anybody's had that maniacal laugh, to the fan base. Like, see, you can't, maybe like, no. Not that with the stats that go against it, with the 1 win at home and what 5-14 over the last 19 games. Like, maybe it was somebody like an Aaron Boone with the Yankees or whatever, but they went to the postseason and stuff. At least there was a difference there, and people hated him just as the coach. But I can't think of anybody who it was just, especially at the end of the season. We know what Kliff Kingsbury is. It's undeniable. Kliff at the end of the seasons can't win football games. And you're going to be like, oh, okay, well, we're going to bring him back and just continue to push in the definition of insanity here and continue to do the same thing over and over again.
You're going to have to play games results. If you're Kliff without Kyler Murray to start next year for maybe 2 months.
Yeah, a guy
Michael
who's
Bidwill would
proven
have
that without being dealt pocket aces and then the flop having 2 more aces in it, not being able to compete with a winning hand, I think that, yeah, I think he's proven to you and I, to the fan base, they know that. And that's why it'd be such a tough sell, from here going on forward.
You would have to tell your fan base that you're going to have to start a backup or a backup to a backup to begin next year. And you're Kliff Kingsbury, and he'll guide us through that. He had COVID once, and we won in Cleveland. Remember that, guys? Cardinals didn't get pocket aces this year. They got what's a bad Texas Hold'em hand, like
7 offsuit. That's the hand they were dealt this season.
Hammer it home. Hammer home. GoPHNX.com. Become a diehard at GoPHNX.com. What does that entail, friends and family? Well, 20% off all merchandise, exclusive membership Discord, where when the party's over on PHNX Cardinals, come hang out and yell at Bo and I. We'll have good group therapy about the Arizona Cardinals. We can get discounts to our exclusive events. You can get discounts up and down GoPHNX.com. Unlock every article, including the many workings of our guy Howard Balzer, who's got a banger of an article right now up. Smash that promo code Howard, HOWART. Cop some gear from the PHNX merchandise locker, like this hat, this Hollywood Hills t-shirt, Bo's repping the hat. And guess what? If you sign up for a diehard membership, bam, you get one for free every year. It's not a one-off. You get a hat and or t-shirt every year you're a diehard. It's the best deal in the Valley. But if you didn't know this, go to GoPHNX.com. 90+% of the articles you find, they're unlocked, they're free, they're ready to rock and roll. Our guy Howard, keeping it real. Oh, man, I loved his piece the other day on the Keim Sean Kugler debacle that really we haven't gotten answers to. But, hey, maybe we'll get answers about some stuff tonight on Hard Knocks.
Was that where he was being a fuddy-duddy? Is that where you asked people to not call him a fuddy-duddy? Yeah, it is a great take on it, and it's not one that you're going to see on Twitter, and it's not one you're going to read on NFL.com or ESPN.com. You're only going to read it at GoPHNX.com. Tonight, it's Hard Knocks. What is it, week 6 of Hard Knocks? And being down to the quarterback's third stringer and having such an injury-depleted roster and them being 4-10, I think it's turning into a baking show. I believe that the highlight of tonight's show, Lecky Fotu, is going to make pancakes. And it's going to astound you, I think, how he actually bakes the pancakes.
Stop. I don't know.
I'm
not into anything you're saying. If you're into what we're saying, we've got Hard Knocks After Dark tonight, 9 p.m., immediately following the airing of Hard Knocks. It's not TV, it's HBO, or maybe, just maybe, it's public access. We don't know for certain, but what we've seen from Hard Knocks this year, sad and laughable on a couple different levels, but hell, we're having a good time watching it. We're having a great time hanging out with all of you. Smash that like button, subscribe to PHNX Sports on the old YouTube. Got a couple pretty big announcements here in the coming days, Bo Brock, pertaining to PHNX Cardinals that you want to stick around for. And listen, buckle up. This season, it's been a nightmare. But the Cardinals, PHNX Cardinals, that is ready to take you into the offseason and be with you there every step of the day. Bo Brock and I are going to be on Radio Row, hopefully interviewing a new head coach and new GM for this franchise. We're going to be at the NFL Combine. My guy Bo's going to be at the Senior Bowl. We got our imprint. We got our fingerprints over everything, and we want you guys to come on this ride with us. We're so grateful of all the support that you guys have given us over the course of this year. So for Bo Brock, I'm Johnny Venerable. We'll see you in a few hours. Have a good one.